What up? This is Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Coded Design, where I teach coding and user interface design. In this video, we're gonna look at code refactoring before and after, specifically auto-loading. What is PHP auto-loading? In PHP, if you are going to use a class that is located on a different file and inside that file there is a class that you want to instantiate, you must include that file so that it becomes a part of this current script. Let's say we want to include, let's say, file something. Please note that this is not the correct syntax. You want to include file something, you want to use file something.php. Inside this file there is a class something, so you want to create an instance of something. So if you want to create an instance of something, a class that is located inside this file, you must first include that PHP file. That PHP file will look like something like this. This is a router. If you look inside this router, there is a class router. So as you can see that even the name of this file is router.php. So this means that I can't just here create a new class without including that file that has that class. So how does auto-loading help us with that? So auto-loading is a functionality that helps us to automatically include this file. Imagine that you are having a very big app with a lot of files, and then how do you avoid a situation where you have to do away with the include? Because if you take this route, that means that you will have to include these files every time. And also remember, the location of the files keep on changing every time, so it might be a mission and a half to always include these files. However, with the help of auto loading, you can just use this function SPL auto load register. It will receive the class name and it will automatically include the files for you. So this means that in any file we can just instantiate any object like items, and that will be it. We don't have to include that include statement whereby we are including this file. So basically that's what auto loading does. So in this code refactoring, we are looking at my old code, this one, comparing it with the new refactored code, this one. So the first thing that we're gonna look at, the lines of code. Let me try to zoom out a little bit here. Zoom out. Let's see. Okay, and then let's see here also. Yes. So I hope you can see. So as you can see that the first one, which is the old one, let me say before. Let me just type here comment before, and then let me comment here after. So the first comparison is going to be the lines of code. As you can see from here to here, we've got only 20. Let me just remove unnecessary spaces. We've got 27 lines of code, and the refactored version, it has got 34 lines of code. So the difference is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. It's almost like plus minus 7 lines. So as you can see that the refactored one has got some extended lines of code than this one. So that means we can say, if we are scoring, we can say that this is point number 1 to the before. Let me just write here PT. That means it stands for point. So that means the old code has got 1 point so far, because the lines of code is lesser here than here, as you can see. Okay, let's continue. Let's look at the readability, how clean or how visually appealing the code is. According to my eye as a designer, and also just as a human being in general, this looks like it's neat, but it's a bit complicated. There is a big chunk of code and it's long. It's a big chunk of code and it's long. Let's look at this one. If you look at this one, there isn't much longer code, and also the lines are just brief. As you can see that this looks like a big chunk of code, but it's declaration, so it's understandable. And you can see here, this is a for each loop. It starts here, it ends here, and then there is just this small chunk of code. And also what I like about this code, there are some spaces in between, rather than, let's say, rather than this one. So in this case, I will give the point to this code, the refactored one, in terms of being clean. So in terms of being clean and visually appealing, this code wins than this one. And then let's look at the actual functionality, meaning that the inner workings of the code, what the code is doing, or rather how it does it. As you can see here, we are opening an if statement, and then we've got an else statement that opens here, and then it ends here, and then we've got some else statement, and then we've got some else statement, and then this is called in programming nested ifs. So as you can see that as you go down your code, it's becoming like complicated, because you've got if inside another if, and then another if, and then another else if, and then another else if. To me, first of all, this is a bad programming practice. In my first year in university, doing software development, a diploma, I was told that you must avoid nested if. It's a bad programming practice. So looking at here, as you can see that we've got this for each, the first one, and then it ends here, and then we've got the inside one, it ends here, and then we've got the last one, and then it ends here. So this is much cleaner to read, and then also it's easy also to understand what's going on here. So I'm looping for the first time, I'm looping for the second time, and then I'm looping for the third time, and that is it. So also point number 2 goes to the refactored version of the code. Okay, now let's read the code. Let's look at some sort of the intelligence of the code, what the code does. So we want to see which code achieves more with less, kind of a thing, or which code achieves more efficiently. So as I've told you that whenever you create an instance of an object, so before that object is created, let's say that object is gonna be items. So object items, before this object item is created, let me just also say, so that you can easily see, let me just say new items, new item. So before this object is created, this function will run, also receiving this word items here, so telling us that we are trying to instantiate items. And then as you can see here, this line gets the file path, which is to classes, in our folder structure. So we are going to all the classes. So the idea here is that all the classes are in one folder. So that's why we are taking this, we are going to this part, to this directory app, we are going to our classes. So in our classes we are taking items and then we are appending it here, and then we are saying .php. So it's like we are creating a solid one file path which might read as the root directory app classes items.php. so this will be a file. This will be replaced by items.php in our case. So that means we are pointing to this file. So now here we are asking if this file exists, which is this file, this item. If it exists, then we might require it. So as you can see here, through the help of auto loading, we are hitting require once for every instantiation, instead of having to require a file. For instance, if we're gonna use let's say class items in this file, then we will have to use a require once, and we put the path to that file that we want to require. Also in another file we will have to do the same thing before we instantiate an object. So it's like saying that first of all include the file that has the class that you want to instantiate. So without this include, you cannot do it, but through the help of this auto loading, that's what we are trying to do. As you can see that this require once, it's only in one file, this one, not in all the files in our application. So we are trying to say if we're dealing with a class item, then we are requiring that class here, that file here that has got the class item where it's defined. So class item will be defined in this file items.php. so first of all, so we are checking here if it exists, then we require it. If it doesn't exist, then we are looking at a different folder, which is in apps. We are looking at model. If it doesn't exist, if it exists, then you require again here. Obviously here, as you can see, we've got the repetition. We are repeating ourselves a lot here because we've got require once, but however, it's much better than to repeat this require once in multiple files. Here we're requiring once in only one file. So check in this folder. If this class doesn't exist, check on this folder, check on this folder, check on this folder, check on this folder, and check on this folder. So whenever I add a folder here for classes, I must always come here and copy these two statements and then copy and paste them and change the name of the folder. As you can see, check on fpdf. If it exists, then require that file. Check on the folder directory database. If it exists, then check off that file. So that's what this code does. The old one, what it does, it just keep on checking using conditional statement, if else, on different directories. It's like it's searching for this file, for this class name that we're instantiating here. So let's just go it through once more. It's checking items because it's going to receive it through this class. It's checking items here. If it doesn't find it, it checks here. If it doesn't find it, it checks here. That's all it does. If it finds it, it requires it once, and then we are done. And then let's look at this auto load. As you can see, it's the same it's the same function, SPL auto load register. It receives item through this parameter, and then first of all, what it does, it declares an empty array, and then in that empty array it puts some file directories. Number one, to classes, we are pointing to the folder app classes, and number two, we are pointing to the folder apps components. So that means here we are giving it only two folders. meaning that inside the folder classes there will be all the classes, the declaration of the classes. As you can see, these are abstract classes, these are app classes, all the app classes, and then this is auto load, and then this is a dependency injection container. So as you can see that in this class we've got all the classes in this folder. And also in app components, if you look at app component, we've got a view here. In my own approach, I don't include this view. Instead, I instantiate it. I make it a class so that I can instantiate it. That means instantiate this login view. Then it has got a method render view. That's this method that deals with the specific HTML. So in a way, this also is a class that needs to be instantiated. So that's why here you see also this component. So here we're declaring an array, and also we are assigning two strings, pointing two strings are paths pointing to classes and pointing to components. And then we say for each, that means we are looping for each directory, class directory as path. As you can see that this loop is gonna loop twice, because in this array we only got two indexes, index number 0 and index number 1, array at 0 and array at 1, and then it's gonna loop twice just because of we are assigning to this array only twice. So for each class directory as path, so that means we are interested on these path 1 and path 2. Here it says echo span. This one is not a line of code. This one I was just testing so that I can see that which class name am I trying to check, or am I trying to include. So this one, ignore it. So in this for each statement, what we do, first of all, we say directory okay, directory is a new variable, is equal to scan dir path, meaning that path, the first one in the first iteration, this is gonna be our path. That means we're gonna point to classes, which our classes are. Where are our classes? Here are our classes. So this is going to be the first path. That means we're going to point to this directory. And then that means scandir. What scandir does, it just goes to this path and it scans for everything, which is all these folders, and it keeps these folders as an array, and then save that array here. So the array will be, let's say inside dir there will be abstract class as string number 1, app classes as string number 2, auto load as string number 3. So these will be some strings. Can I maybe quickly var dump it so that we can see practically? Let me just dump where is scan dir? Let me just dump dir. Let me just quickly dump it. Okay. Let me just die here. Exit. Okay, let me just check. Okay, XAMPP is running. Let's check here. Also here is running. Let's see. Okay, as you can see here that in our string, which is on that directly class, we've got the first item, it's a dot, and the second item, it's a double dot, and then the first one, it's di container, it's abstract classes, it's app classes, auto load. So what are those things? Here are those things. If we are here in class, we've got abstract classes, we've got app classes, we've got auto load, we've got dependency injection containers. So please, for now, don't mind this first dot and this second dot. This is how we are eliminating it from there. We're just looking for an array difference from the original one, dir, and then we want to minus these two dots. We don't need them. So basically we are assigning two paths that we're gonna work on, then we are looping through them through this array. That means being interested on path 1 for now, and then we're gonna loop again being interested on path 2. So we scan the directory path 1, which is this one, the class directory, and then after that we get all the files and folders, and then we just eliminate the first and the second two dots there as part of an array. And then after that we are saying for each directory, which is this one in this array different, that means now for each folder here and the file as content, meaning that now this abstract class is going to be here on content, the next loop is going to be app class, the third loop is going to be auto load. So if file exists path, which is this path, and then the path, that means to classes, and then inside classes we go to content. Content will be abstract class, app class, or whatever, and then from then we append a class name, which is item. So if inside this folder you've got a file by the name of item, then just include it. And then after that it goes also to a subdirectory. Let's say which one that has got more than one folder. Let me just check. Vendors. As you can see that in vendors there is no file here, so there is just a folder philantro. So also it will go to philantro and then look for items here. So it goes into the folder twice. That means it first goes to the outer container, and also it goes through the second container. So this is looping through for the first container, and then this is looping through for the second container, and then once it finds something, and then it includes it. So as you can see that here we are only putting like the file directories that we are interested in checking this class. This is the old one. So here we are checking on app class, we are checking on app modules, we are checking on app controllers, we are checking on class philantro. As you can see that I think, okay, this is app class. We are checking on class philantro, we are checking also on class database. As you can see that we are repeating ourselves a lot here because we've been in this path, but now we want let's say database. Also we've been here looking for philantro. Also we are here now looking for FPDF, as you can see. But if you look at this approach, what it does, it scans the scan dir, it scans this folder class for all its folders, and it's gonna loop through all its folders, and then inside the folder it will look for the file that it's looking for. And then if it doesn't find it, it checks if is there a subfolder. If there is a subfolder, it gets in, and also it looks for the file. Looking at this code, to me at this point or so far, it looks like it does more with less, because this one I must put these folders, I must be aware of these folders. For instance, inside the app class, I must be aware that there is philantro. Also, I must be aware that there is database. Also, I must be aware that there is FPDF. But here, I'm only aware of this folder. Then the rest happens automatically. This code will loop through all those folders and search for the file. And then let's say we also have got another folder that we must loop through. The only thing that I will do, I will just add that path here. Let's say we've got also another folder that it must look through. Let's say city it's new F, then we are done. But here, if we want to add another folder to check on, we just have to copy these. Let's check where this if and else goes. This if else ends here. So what we do, this is what we do, we copy this else and put it here, and then we've got to say new directory, new folder, and also if it exists then include that folder, then include that new F. So as you can see here, it's a mission and a half to even modify this code, but here it's more cleaner and straight to the point. It's just one line. That means there are lesser chances for making mistake. So in terms of code intelligence, what this code does with less lines, I think this code does more. It goes an extra mile to help me as a developer. First of all, in terms of readability and also in terms of intelligence, it does more with less. So it's another point to the refactored version. So let's just briefly talk about refactoring. Refactoring, according to me, it's not just changing your code, coming back tomorrow and change your code, but you come back tomorrow trying to make your code cleaner, trying to make your code readable so that the other person can come and read your code. Before, I used to rely on commenting, where I explain that, let's say, scanning through directory and blah blah blah, this is what is going on, until I was watching a video by Uncle Bob on clean code, and he said that it's possible to write a code that explains itself. The reason why you are relying on comment, it's simply because your code doesn't explain itself. It's not self-expressive. Obviously, when I heard it, it was like a magic. Even now, I'm not yet there, but I'm trying. So you must write your code in such a way that it explains itself. You don't have to put some comment. This is what he said. Your code will rot, meaning that your comments will lie. Maybe I will say here looping through whatever, and then somebody else will come and move this statement from here to a different place. That means now this comment is lying. It's no longer true now, it's no longer valid, and that's what has been happening. That's why I've chosen to do the refactoring and just try to write a code that explains itself, that is easy to read. So refactoring is all about making your code clean, making sure that it's expressive, it expresses itself, your function naming, your variable naming, at least it's meaningful, I can read it, and also it's extensible so that it's easier to modify or to extend. So it's 1 point for this one. Then I think that is all about refactoring. I hope at least you understand what is it that you do when you are refactoring a code, and also you can see the difference between that code and this one, that this one does more with less, and also to make changes on this one, it's just a matter of copying this line and pasting it here, and that's it. But here is the matter of copying nested ifs, which is, it will make it difficult to read. So that is it for me, Matthew Msingati, the designer and developer. If you feel like this video has added value into your overall understanding of refactoring, please subscribe, and also look at the description below for some other videos which are part of this series, real life applications in PHP. Otherwise, for me, thank you so much.